So, so tell me, who are you and what is it that you do?
Yeah, Achuma, Miyahuen, Anette William Madrigal Jr., Net Nakutanga Kawiya, and Achay Pishantechon, Iba. And Pimpalo and Tome Iba. So I introduced myself in our language, the Kawiya language. My name is Will Madrigal Jr. I'm an enrolled member of the Cahuilla Band of Indians, and I'm also a language teacher and a PhD student in Native American Studies at UC Riverside, where I also teach Cahuilla. Um, I also live on the Palma Reservation, which is my wife's reservation here in San Diego County. And I'm a culture bearer, a researcher, bird singer, and community member. Um, yeah, and uh, I've been learning the language my whole life. I'm still a student of the language, and hopefully, the language will continue to be shared and will be cultivated by the next generations to come because we almost lost it not too long ago.
Oh, really?
Uh,
How so?
yeah. There are many instances in history where we could have lost it
Mm-hmm.
because of pressures from the colonizer, whether it was the United States government or Spanish government, the Mexican government before. So we
Mm-hmm.
had 3 waves of genocide in California, like Southern California tribes, the Cahuillas, the Luceños, the Serranos, the Tongva, the Kumeyaay, just a few of many tribes just in our region, both from the ocean to the mountains. And my tribe was in the mountains, but the most detrimental impact to um, our language and losing our language was because of the missions in California. 21 missions throughout the coast, all on the coast of California, were taking Indian families away from their homes and from their villages and putting them into the missions and not allowing them to leave and indoctrinating them in Spanish culture and religion. And so they forbade everyone to speak their language. They wanted them to speak Spanish or Latin. They wanted them to stop acting like who they were, meaning their gathering practices, everything from the way they spoke to the way they dressed, everything had to be changed, their hair. So that was really detrimental to the language because you had almost a whole generation or 2 generations that were discouraged and punished from speaking the language. So that was in the late 1700s, and then you get to 100 years later, we had Indian boarding schools that were enacted by the United States, again taking Indian children away from their parents and away from their clan homes and putting them in these schools that were overcrowded and underfunded. Um, Again, forbidding them to speak their language, forbidding the men and from wearing their hair long, cutting their hair to military style. They just doing drills and had very traumatic experience for the kids. And those that survived, there's still a few that survived from that period from 1880 all the way to the 1960s. So it's a lot of years, right, of indoctrination, of forced assimilation is what it is. And so our language suffered again, and our songs suffered again because we had generations of kids that had forgotten the language because they were punished so severely. Um, but then there was a resurgence in the 70s and 80s, partly due to the American Indian movement and what those folks
Right,
were
right,
doing
yeah,
there.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So it encouraged Indians, Native Americans from all over the world to re-embrace and reconnect. And so here in Southern California, we definitely got the message, and we started to mobilize different programming. It was just grassroots. It was just a lot of times it was just one elder who knew the language as a kid and started practicing that and conveying that and sharing that wisdom and knowledge through songs and stories and history. And so growing up, I was one of those lucky few to on the reservation to go to not only their houses, the elders' houses that were teaching, but the classes that they organized, the real small classes where we just simply just brought a little bit of food together, sat down at the same table, and listened to the stories and songs and the language.
That's
And
incredible, man.
yeah, yeah, it was a great way to grow up. Again, a lot of it was because the leadership of my parents. My father is a language teacher and a culture bearer and a bird singing elder, and so I was lucky, fortunate to grow up with him. And my mom also is Luiseño Indian, and you know her people have a strong culture as well here in Southern California. So just a neighboring tribe to the Cahuillas. Luiseños always grew up next to the Cahuillas, and so I grew up in a household of 9 kids. There were 9 of us, and then my parents, so 11 people. And we just tried to learn and do as much as we could growing up. But at the same time, you know, making education a priority. Education was always at the forefront of our family, as well as the culture. So they really went hand in hand. There was no conflict there, right? So I was the first in my family, my immediate family, to go to college. My dad went to college at UC Riverside. I followed in his footsteps, and I'm getting a doctorate there at UC Riverside in Native Studies and History. And my mom went to Haskell Indian Nations and got a associate's degree there in the 70s. So I just, you know, come from a long line of leaders, and really
Right.
fortunate to have that, you know, and to have that guidance. And my wife as well is also a scholar. She works for the Rincon tribe, and she has a master's in museum studies. So she's all about preserving the material culture as well as the written culture, the spoken culture, right? So it's just nice to see how not just myself and my family, but other families are now starting to be more and more interested in preserving and protecting our heritage in various ways. You know, everything from archaeologists, becoming doctors, becoming lawyers, and even politicians, you know, to carry on the fight with the government, with the state of California, you know, to get our land back, and also with the U.S. government, you know, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who has their thumb on us. So yeah, I really appreciated growing up that way, and that legacy of resiliency. Really, that's who our people were. We were resilient. We could adapt to any situation that came our way, and we made the best of it with, you know, our spirituality and our humor. You know, that really kept us going forward as a community. And then for individuals that were having trouble with, you know, attending schools, you know, and doing things that just weren't a good space for Native people to be in. You know, the racism, the genocide, it all continues even today. You know, it just takes different forms. So that's why I wanted to go to the university to analyze and figure out what was going on with us, how to address those problems that we have on the reservation, and how do we keep fighting to protect our sovereignty, really, our right to govern ourselves, our right to be who we are as Native people, and more importantly, the right to speak our language, to speak it, to teach it, to use it, to celebrate it. Because it wasn't too long ago that we were outlawed from even speaking our language or being who we were. It wasn't until the Self-Determination Act that it was finally official. The United States did not want us to be forcibly assimilated anymore.
Well,
So long ago, yeah.
it's very interesting about your story that you said, because just like we were talking about before we started recording, is that my grandpa was full blooded Cahuilla, and only my whole life I've always wondered about, the well, before I get ahead of myself, I was wondering about basically my native culture, especially being Native American, and I've always been curious, but only until recently, like I told you, I was super compelled to actually, um, I mean, simply to just reach out to someone, just like yourself, uh, to learn more about it. And I really do think that more people are wanting to learn about their, I guess you could say, ancient roots, or just going back to the roots. You see it everywhere, not just with Native Americans. I see it with a lot of people who are. I see more people that typically have like Nordic blood. Uh, I see more people like with tattoos. How do I say? Just more people wanting to learn about their history, and I think it's really it's super interesting that like I'm finding more and more people that really do. But this subject is really, it really is near and dear to me, to especially to hear everything that you have to say. Um, Going back to what I was saying about your story is so the things that I heard about my grandpa was that, as I told you, my grandpa was born on the reservation. Uh, at some point, his mom gave him up for adoption, and I believe that he was put in a boarding school, like you were talking about, and he was one of those kids where everything that he learned growing up, he pretty much had to, I guess you could say, unlearn. And like I said, he didn't actually learn he was Native American until he was in his 40s, which is crazy. And a lot of what you talk about with your family, um, I find I guess similarities in my own family. It's just interesting uh to see that, how do I say, it seems that like a number, how do I say, well, basically that I resonate with your story very much because of things I told you about my grandpa, and just I see a lot of similarities in your story, and like not just with my grandpa's but also in mine. It's just very, very interesting, and it's almost just like if every culture is the same, like if like I don't know, Irish people had the same kind of oppression and they all have the same story, you know. Um, but I wanted to ask you, so you told me a lot about yourself and your family and all that. So it may be a stupid question to ask, but at the end of the day, what inspired you to actually want to teach people, uh, to get the degree you do and actually want to get out there and well, like I said, teach people?
Hmm. Yeah, I would have to say my family was a big influence on that. Obviously, coming from a family, a legacy of teachers and leaders, many of whom, had um, always told us and left the message that education is important, especially in the white man's world, because
Right.
the white man's world only benefits the white man, and all the laws are written for him. So we're always constantly coming up against that, no matter what we do.
Have Have
Um,
you ever heard of Russell Means?
yes, I have.
Yeah. Have you ever read his book, his autobiography?
I glanced at it a while back though, but
Yeah.
actually my uncle knew Russell. He
Oh,
used to come
really?
to UCR all the time. Yeah, when he was
Interesting.
representing AIM, he,
Uh-huh.
he used to come to our UCR Medicine Ways conference in the '80s and
Interesting.
the '90s. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, when you started mentioning out in the 70s and 80s, the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah, no, I have his book. I've only read through half of it. Just real quick, Zoom told me that we only have 10 minutes left. If it kicks us off, I will start another one and I'll send you a link for it. If you have the
Okay.
time. Do you
Yeah.
have?
No, I knew.
Okay, yeah, no. If it says we got 9 minutes left, so if it kicks us off, I'll just send you another one. We'll just continue going where we're going. But so tell me about your family and what inspires you to learn and all that. Now, um, so obviously you have like you have a definite connection. You're definitely connected with the tribe, but are you involved with the tribe at all? Like, I don't know, you tribal member or anything like that? I don't really know how any of that works, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny how it was set up actually, and I just grew up with it as being normal to me, and but now I see you looking in from the outside, and it makes me think of it, how crazy of a setup it actually is. But yeah, as soon as you're born, it's like Catholics, you get baptized, right? As a baby, you also
Mhm.
get enrolled into your tribe as a baby. Usually, your parents will vouch for you, or whether you have one parent or two parents, they'll fill out the enrollment for you with and submit it to the tribal office, and then you
Right.
get put on a roll. And a roll is just a list of names who are registered for the
Right.
tribe, right? So unfortunately, you can only pick one. You can't pick, both of your parents because they
Uh-huh.
might be from different tribes. Like in my case, my mom was from La Jolla and my dad's from Cahuilla. So I got enrolled in Cahuilla, and so what that means is you get a enrollment card. It has it's like an ID, like a
Right.
school ID. Now
Hmm.
they look more like government IDs, but really, it's not. There's no real benefit in the outside world for having that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What the benefits are for being a tribal member is that you can partake in tribal member government affairs, right? So civic duties, like going to the tribal council, general council meetings, where they discuss, governance, laws, issues, whole agendas that affect the Cahuilla leadership and Cahuilla community. So that's always been something I've been involved in. You also have the opportunity to be elected to governmental offices. So every
Uh-huh.
chairman, have you heard of that? Chair people.
I've seen it. I've seen it on one of the websites. Yeah.
Yeah, so usually you have to be an adult member. So
Uh-huh.
until you're 18 years of age, you can get benefits from the tribe.
Right.
So whether that's scholarship money or Christmas parties, money for supplies for school. Tribes have different programs that for benefits for their members. So all the way up until 18, you can take advantage of that. And then once you're 18, you're introduced to the tribe as a adult member, right?
Hmm.
Nothing changes. You don't have to fill out anything. But once you're an adult member, you can run for office, and you can get, there might be other benefits that you might be, like tribal revenue. Then you're eligible to receive tribal revenues from a tribal operation or enterprise, right? So
Right.
tribes, various enterprises. One of them is gaming and casinos. Other enterprises are like solar, agriculture, timber for tribes up in the north, etc. Businesses, basically.
Right. Yeah, I had no idea. That's interesting. Uh-huh.
So there are tribal owned businesses both on and off the reservation. Because a lot of
Interesting.
times the
Mhm.
reservations aren't really, they're not big enough. They're like tiny little, I call them concentration camps. And that's been pointed out. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
no, really, that's what they are. Like they didn't care if
Uh-huh.
we survived or didn't. They just wanted us out of the way. So they picked the most rural areas. They didn't even check if we had adequate water or
Yeah.
anything. But they
Hmm.
focused on that, and they said these are executive order reservations in California. Other reservations throughout the country were made through treaties, so they're a lot bigger. The
Right.
ones down here, like Saboba and Cahuilla and Rincon, some of them are only a couple hundred acres, which is nothing for a tribe of 500 members and their families, right?
To
So
function. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, so as you can probably tell, we struggled to survive on that little patch of land, but we did. And so yeah, some of our enterprises are on the reservation, off the reservation, because we can still buy land as a tribe, and it's called fee land because we pay, taxes on it just like everybody else.
Hmm.
but the reservation itself and the other fee land that we get, we can also put into trust. So then it becomes official federal land and reservation.
Interesting.
And the reservation, yeah. And we've only been allowed to do that successfully probably in the last 50 years. And then reservations have been around for 150 years.
Why have you guys only been lucky?
Just haven't had the means. They've kept us in poverty. The BIA has really, they've really dropped the ball. They've messed up their fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we have enough to eat, make sure that we have enough to prosper, and live as community. So we only got to expand the reservations when we started generating the money to do that. And
so
to buy land outright.
It's kind of the economy that needs. I mean, sure, there's other things that need to be developed there, but basically, an economy that is what needs to kind of grow to help that place.
Right. We didn't have any economy. We were in poverty until probably 60s, 70s, 80s. Some tribes didn't even have electricity until the 90s on the reservation.
Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, I've heard even in South North Dakota, they live in pretty bad conditions. Yeah, I completely believe you.
But we lack basic necessities to live normally. So we're all in survival mode. And so government rations were given called commodities, USDA commodities. And those were really unhealthy for us because instead of our traditional diet of plants and animals and seeds and herbs, we were given butter and lard and just, the worst quality of food. Not even just the ingredients were poor quality, no variety as far as fruits and vegetables. Where I grew up, everything was in cans. So we had
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Canned stews, it was just bad, but that's all we had, I mean, the economy, like I said, there was no economy surviving. And so a lot of us grew up surviving on those rations, especially large families, right? Without the means to adequately feed your families, you had no choice, So those commodities were essential. But later in life, more recently, the commodities got a little bit better. We started getting vegetables. We started getting bison meat, which is really cool, really healthy. But yeah, it took its toll because we have the highest rate of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes of any minority group.
I can only imagine. I've heard. Yeah, Mel. I completely believe you, man. It really is crazy. The thing about talking to you is I'm pretty sure everybody. I myself have heard all kinds of stories about what goes on, on reservations and how Native Americans are treated, and I'm sure other people have too. But you pretty much solidify you pretty much, you yourself experienced it, and you're alive today, as we're speaking May 31st,
Okay.
And so where we left off was you're talking about, which is relevant to one of the questions I have. Basically, living standards on the reservation. You're talking about when you're growing up, you had the explanation you used was packed cans of meat, and talking about how I've heard stories about living conditions on reservations, and I'm sure anyone who listens to this has too, and you've pretty much confirmed our all the stories about what life is like on a reservation, and it's it's horrific. I mean, to actually hear, because I've never actually heard anybody say what in person actually what the living standards are like living on a reservation, and to actually hear it come from someone's mouth who actually experienced it. I mean, dude, it's heavy stuff. It's crazy.
I should also disclose too. or disclaimer that, everybody's different, but um, situations obviously had to improve. So I'm talking from when the reservations were first created as concentration camps back in the 1880s to 1920s, 1930s. It was still really, really bad. It wasn't until we started to get our own Indian healthcare systems and clinics and things like that.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
actually, I can even I believe because my mom's registered with the tribe. I actually myself, I've been out to the clinic a few times out in I don't know, somewhere near San Bernardino, um, and use the services out there. But yeah, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So once we got those clinics, health improved a little bit, and we had to fight for that. My grandparents and their generation that fought for the funding for these clinics, and they've been going strong till today. Bringing in that much needed kind of Western medicine, right?
Right.
And dentistry. However, we continue to practice our ways of health and well-being, our indigenous ways, and that included using the plants and animals for food and for medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, things greatly improved in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as far as having the freedoms to go back to our ways and our traditional foods, traditional medicines, finding work off the reservation, right?
Right.
Just improving every generation, and then obviously with the start of gaming, the gaming enterprises, things that continue to improve, right?
Right.
So now it's not a scary place at all now.
Interesting.
It's very family oriented. It's like, the best way to compare it is a close community,
Mm-hmm.
a community that protects itself and each other, a community that thrives on the success of its children, of its youth, strong leadership, right? Sovereign, right? The whole concept of sovereignty that was created by Europeans, really, right? To describe self-sufficiency of a nation, right?
Right.
And so we are a self-sufficient nation. However, we do, work, go to school off the reservation. We get our groceries, obviously, from the grocery store. Our houses are the same as everybody else's. We are culturally a secure cultural community, right?
Right.
So we're not disconnected from the world at all. We have internet, we have everything everybody else has, but culturally we keep to ourselves, and we keep our ceremonies, our language, things like that, pretty close, So that's at the forefront. Yeah.
Right. Right. Before we go into the next subject, I gotta turn off this air conditioning really, really quick. 1 second. All right, so we've talked about a number of different things, especially history and your experience and all that stuff. And now I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into the Cahuilla culture, language especially, and just for anyone who's listening, could you tell me what region of the U.S. The Cahuilla tribe comes from, and examples of its culture, what it's known for, things like that.
Yeah, until recently, our origin story, our creation story, and a lot of our cultural ways, like I said, were kept within the reservation community, within the village community, for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons was so that it wouldn't get exploited, right? We were protective of that information. We still are, the knowledge. And we want to ensure that it's not lost and that it's passed down, right, to the next 7 generations, at least. And so it wasn't so recently that scientists started coming onto the reservations, wanting to study us. Around the turn of the century is when a lot of that happened. Some notable anthropologists, or Kroeber, a guy named John Peabody Harrington. These guys got famous. They got famous in academia as well as in American culture as scientists that came and studied the Indians of California,
Mm-hmm.
as well as other places. So there's reasons because of that reason, we wanted to safeguard our knowledge because they exploited our knowledge in the way that they wrote about us. They didn't consult with us and ask if that was okay, if the information that they had written down was accurate. But the other side of the coin on that was that we also had later, after they passed away, these researchers, they left volumes and volumes of archives in the institution that they were working at or with their students. So as time went on, as we became scholars and went to college, we understood that we had access to those archives too. So we were able to piece together gaps in our history, in our culture, in our language, things that were taken from us long ago. But we are Southern California people. Our creation story is at the foundation of our religion, foundation of our life ways, and it tells us a pretty awesome story. It's an epic story.
Mm-hmm.
It's an epic story and how the first life was created in the universe, and then how the planet that we call Earth, Temal, was created first, and then the people were created. Right? Everybody was created together. There weren't just Cahuillas that were created. There were multiple types of people, of groups that were created and then later dispersed across the globe. And so we knew from very early on, because of our stories, that we weren't alone, that we weren't the only civilization or the only people on Earth, but we had relations that were created with us in the beginning, but lived on the other side of the world. So we knew about the Europeans. We knew about the Africans. We knew about Australian people. And in some cases, we would travel there and we would meet with them and we talk with them and we get medicine from them, and we bring it back home. So we were very, very, very much not stationary people. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big stereotype about Indians. We were only stationary when they forced us to be on those reservations.
Right. Yeah. I'm going. I think every indigenous peoples were nomadic. No.
It's not that we're a nomadic. I think the term nomadic is wrong.
Uh-huh.
What we did do was we traveled in migration patterns.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
We weren't wandering around aimlessly like nomads.
Yeah, absolutely.
We knew exactly where we were going. Every step that we took, someone had previously taken that same step. So we followed the stars. We navigated through the stars. We navigated through the different formations in the land, like the mountains. We had names for every mountain, every hill, and that's how we knew where we were going and where we had been. We navigated through the stars at night. And we learned multiple languages, not just our own, so that when we went traveling into someone else's territory that spoke a different language, we had to be able to communicate with them to get, their permission, right, to go through their territory. So we had a very strict, kind of protocol on how we did that, and we still do. Mm-hmm. As people, we don't go into other people's territories and other people's lands without asking for their permission. And and folks that visit us, we extend the same hospitality. We try to be hospitable in the way that we welcome them. We host them as best we can. We really show a good position, we put a good foot forward, right? And we did that with the Europeans when they first came, all the way back in the will be the 14th century, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Nomadics, or if you want to, Vikings or Nordics, came to this continent. But yeah, so I would say, where are the Cahuilla people from? We're from right here in Southern California, otherwise known as Riverside, San Bernardino County. So you can imagine, those are the biggest counties in the United States
Are
combined.
they?
Yeah, they are.
Oh, I had no idea.
Land-wise, space-wise, acreage, those are the largest counties in the United States.
Oh, damn, I had no idea. That's crazy.
If you can imagine, from east to west, so the east side, the Colorado River, you know where that's at? The border of Arizona?
Right.
All the way west to almost to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And then from kind of right below the high desert,
Mm-hmm.
so San Bernardino, where San Manuel is, Big Bear area, all the way down south to almost to the Mexican border right there, to the Salton Sea or Lake Cahuilla.
Yeah, the notorious Salton Sea. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Lake Cahuilla is what it was called.
Yeah, Lake Cahuilla. I was watching something about that whole area. Sometimes when I'd go hiking like out by Mount Baldy, uh,
Yeah.
I would find these like holes in like the granite out there. I don't know if it's granite, but some kind of rock. And it turns out those holes, like those cylindric kind of holes, are actually used for grinding acorns and stuff. And like this, I barely watched a video about this yesterday, and like this whole time I was like, I've been walking by these things for like my whole life, and like, and apparently some like probably if not all, then a number of those holes are probably from actually the Cahuilla tribe out the doing the grinding whatever they need to and all that. It's just crazy. Like I had no idea that so much history, especially history regarding the tribe is out here. I just thought it was a desert this whole time, but yeah, there's so much history out here, and I really want to learn more about it, actually.
Mm. Yeah, I had the same enthusiasm too, growing up, hearing the stories about those places and those features, those mortars and how we used them and what they were used for and when. Some of them are hundreds or even thousands of years
Thousands,
old.
yeah. Oh yeah, thousands, definitely.
Yeah. And so I went to UCR for anthropology because I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a professional archaeologist myself. And so I've worked all over our territory, even down south. And I was trained in Durango, Colorado, also to do field archaeology methodologies. And so I made a career out of doing cultural resources management. So recently I did, up until recently, I was doing that as I was a tribal representative in the field, and then training representatives in the field to recognize these sites so that we can protect them. So just what you're talking about, recognizing those sites there that may or may not have been previously recorded by archaeologists in the past, but are preserved and protected. Their integrity is protected as well, because that is our culture in the ground, in the rocks, and it still has a lot of stories to tell, And
Yeah,
that's
I was out in Idlewild. Actually, some guy, there was like there was some rock out there, near some little town, very vague. uh,
it's this
and
one. It's this one, Kyle.
yeah,
This is the rock above Idlewild.
I can't remember. This was like a little boulder, and there was actually
Okay.
painting on there, and the part of I believe, like the ritual was that like someone's female's grandmother or mother would take them to there to like pretty much say you've pretty much gone into motherhood, and they would continue the drawing on the rock itself, and apparently you can still go see it, although I have to find exactly where, but it is in Idlewild, and I'd definitely love to go see that because it's still there today.
Yeah, my reservation is about 15-minute drive from there. So
That's
I could
great.
go from there to Idlewild. to see those sites. I've seen that site you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, so
I
you
worry
know,
about it. 'Cause,
I can
yeah,
only imagine, dude, because it's just,
yeah,
yeah, I can. That's exactly what I was thinking when I saw it. I was just like, man, someone stupid is gonna, I can only imagine.
right.
I see all the beer cans and stuff that are out in the mountains and all that stuff. So I can only imagine the stupid stuff someone would do to it.
Exactly. I was afraid of that. So that's the reason I became an archaeologist so that I could study the laws that were supposed to protect those areas. And
That's,
yeah, unfortunately, there are very few laws that
that's
actually protect,
crazy.
and even fewer people are prosecuted that do desecrate and deface and vandalize, just because nobody cares, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's like white collar crime, basically, right?
Yeah, that's a very good example. Yeah, yeah.
It is, unfortunately, and until the laws are strengthened and new laws are written, I'll continue to worry, but I'll continue to educate folks also and tell them, make sure that they're aware. Like, hey, when you guys go camping, like you do, most families do every summer, you're gonna come across stuff like this.
Hmm.
But what do you do if you do? You can admire it. You can still enjoy it.
Hmm.
Please leave it alone.
Yeah, yeah.
It. Don't get your filthy fingers all over it.
I don't care what
Yeah,
your tagging name is,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I know, yeah.
Do not destroy the integrity of the culture that's there. That's my
Right.
people. You
Yeah.
know, they left that for us for a reason, so that we can learn from it. And, yeah, unfortunately, there's so much that we've lost and continue to lose today. But I think there are other avenues that we've kind of broken into in other spaces where we can actually draw a lot of our knowledge from as well. There's the knowledge from those sites, and then there's the archival knowledge and things that were taken from us that we can reclaim, and that's where we get a lot of language material.
Right. Uh-huh. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned a couple of guys in the turn of the century that made a living, a career, a reputation, became infamous because of going out to Indian communities and extracting knowledge, right? So it was a very extracting process, and that nothing was reciprocated or given back to the communities. They just kind of came and just sucked up all the knowledge and left, and as you can imagine, that's pretty unethical, right? Pretty
Right.
downright dirty, it's just, and that's how we felt, and so ever since then we've hated anthropologists and archaeologists and linguists, especially, that come to do the same thing, right? And we've turned them away, you know and then we realize, hey, why don't we become those experts?
Yeah,
And we said,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the way to do it. Yeah.
we've been sending our kids to get degrees. And I don't know if you heard, but this February this year, the University of California is making it free tuition to all California Indians. So you might want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you told me about that. That's super interesting. Yeah, I definitely look into it. I'm gonna write that down actually.
Yeah, write that down, dude, because it's pretty big deal, as it goes to protecting and preserving. But yeah, the language itself, as I mentioned to you before, really, really took a lot of hits at different points in our history. The first one was the missions, that started in the 1700s, ended in the 1800s. And then the second wave of colonization that really, really was heavy was the boarding school period. So
Hmm.
boarding schools were run by either a religious order or by the Bureau of Indian Education themselves. You've heard of Sherman in
Sure.
Riverside? Sherman Indian High School?
I swear I have, but not. I mean, maybe years ago I've heard of it, but
So,
I swear I've heard of it though. Uh-huh. Tell me
yeah,
about it.
that would be the closest boarding school to you. I mean, there are hundreds of them, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but Sherman is one of the last ones to actually um, stop their assimilationist type of school, of institution and actually became a pro-cultural institution with kids learning their culture and celebrating it, and Native American teachers that were hired to actually teach the kids, and that was, you know, complete 180 from what it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So instead of being punished and beaten for speaking your language at the boarding school, now we had people like my Aunt Lori Sisquak, who's been teaching there for 30 years and who runs the Sherman Indian Museum there on campus. She's teaching Cahuilla kids their language, that it's okay to be Cahuilla. She's teaching all the other kids that are there, whether they're Navajo, Hopi, Miwok, Pomo, that they should go and learn their culture from their families, and bring that to Sherman to share the cultural diversity with all students there, and her and the teachers too. And that's what they enjoy. That's what they celebrate at Sherman Indian High School today.
Oh man, this is incredible. Actually, man, I love all this. All the stuff that you're telling me. It's incredible. I'm very glad to hear all this, and I'm more than honored to be talking to someone who's actively part of it and doing it.
Yeah. I just, you know, like I said, I'm still learning. Pushing 40 right now, and I feel like I've barely touched the surface, really. I mean, there's so much there, you know, and there's so much to be gained for our communities, because I really want to see our communities get stronger, you know,
Absolutely.
and more resilient, and more, you know, positive, you know, energy coming out of our communities. You know, there's just so much, you know, that we've endured trauma-wise in our history. And there's so many problems too, like alcoholism, drug abuse, incarceration, things like that are still affecting us. So I really think that the way forward is learning as best we can about our past.
Absolutely. No, I love everything you're telling me, man. One of the things I want to really ask you, one of the big things I wanted to ask you, and one of the reasons why I actually wanted to have you on here is I want to talk about is language. You know, when you first introduced yourself, I thought you were speaking Chinese. You know, to me, I have no idea because I have never actually even heard the language myself. No, I've never actually heard anybody. Are you speak it fluently? Do you?
I don't think anybody speaks it fluently, because fluency is kind of like, you know, in the eye of the beholder. In other
Oh, I
words,
see.
it's not a useful concept for Indian tribes, you know, because it's basically a measurement that is originated outside of our culture. It has no bearing on our culture.
Right.
What we consider, you know, acceptable, I guess, or favorable, is that folks are just using it as best they can.
Yeah.
And that's as simple as just saying or introducing yourself in Cahuilla, saying who your family is, you know, just simple conversations is what we're encouraging folks to
Can
do.
can you
Yeah.
give me some examples of
Yeah.
how the language is what it sounds like, and two, how it just differs from the English language so that anybody can kind of understand
Yeah.
when somebody is speaking it.
Yeah. An example I like to use in my classes is just simply the word for hello. The word
Right?
for hello. It doesn't mean hello per se. Miyahue is how we say it. So when you greet someone, no matter who they are, the proper way is to say miyahue. Miyahue is a word that is directly asking what, you know, how your heart is, you know, how is your
Oh.
day? And we have this sound that they don't have in English. So
Yeah.
that's cool, because you know, you got to get used to saying it. You know, I tell the students the simplest way is just saying hello. That's how you start to speak the language, right?
Right.
You know, and then what do you usually follow that up with in English? You're usually like, how are you, right? And
Right.
or if you're speaking to a group of people, how are all of you, and and there's different ways to say that in Korea, but the simplest way is just to say miyahue, hello, pish emechibe, pish emechibe, and it's a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a direct question, and it's saying, what, hello, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, hello, how are you doing? How does your heart feel today, right? And so that's the beginning of the dialogue, basic dialogue in Korea. And so what I found, and my colleagues have found, who are also Korea teachers and Korea linguists, is that if you teach dialogue to students that have no exposure to Korea, or very little even, they catch on. They catch on because they realize that they're not just learning a set of vocabulary words or a set of adjectives or some other type of language mechanics, but they're utilizing something that they can use
Right.
in the future, right? And that they can teach their kids if they wanted to. It's not complicated. It's a phrase, and how you learn it is you use it. You practice it over and
Yeah,
over.
absolutely.
You don't have to think about, like, oh, do I have the right participle, or do I have the right noun, verb, subject,
Conjugation.
agreement, conjugations, right? And
Yeah.
all that you learn in high school English, right? Or even in college. That's all tertiary. I mean, you'll learn that, but you're gonna learn it in a different way.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're gonna learn it. You're gonna learn it different methodology, an indigenous methodology.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my colleague and I put together at UCR for the first ever, Cahuilla language series offered by any UC, and we're really proud of that. We've been teaching it for about 4 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and we still have such great enthusiasm, and feedback about the language is real positive from students. And even if they're not Cahuillas, because a lot of our students, we have a few Cahuillas, and we have a lot of who are from other tribes.
Mm-hmm.
They said they'd rather take Cahuilla than having to take Spanish or French.
Crazy. Uh-huh.
Yeah, because you have to take a language in order to graduate.
Uh-huh.
So it's usually like a year of, whatever, a foreign language, foreign. So we
Mm-hmm.
got in under the foreign language requirement to teach Cahuilla, and it's been a lot of fun. So we teach the dialogue, conversational Cahuilla, start very basic, and then gets really, really complicated to where we put together both numbers, colors, different nouns, right? And then both past tense, future tense, present tenses. We add all that in there. And the way we do it is indigenous methods, right? There's also some great resources out there. More recently, right? People have been writing about Cahuilla language. Both our people and scientific allies, right? So I point to those. I point to the Malki Museum in Morongo because they have so many texts, both on Cahuilla history, as well as the language, as well as plants, traditional plant uses in the language. So I would encourage you to start there, to go online at malkimuseum.org and check out their online catalog of books, and you'll see the language grammar there. You'll see the dictionary there.
How do you spell that?
Malki, I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. MALKI museum.org.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that's interesting too, because that's the village, one of the original villages there in the past, that's now on the Morongo Reservation. So before the reservation was there, it was the Malki Pakiktam and Wanakiktam tribes, or the clans. Clans are like big families, right? Of
Right.
Cahuilla. So those two families lived there, um, pretty well. You know, I mean, you think it's desert, but as soon as you get up into those canyons behind Morongo on the north side, it's beautiful, lush.
Mm-hmm.
Water sources there all year round. I mean, even now they graze their cattle back there. They go hunting back there. So, um, but yeah, so Mulkey is the name of the museum that's there. It was opened and operated by a tribal member and a leader from there in 1963, and it's been successful ever since. But Mulkey means to dodge in Cahuilla, like
Mm-hmm.
really quick.
Like dodgeball.
Yeah, kind of like dodgeball.
Right, right.
And the museum is actually on the village site itself, the old village site on the reservation, and you can go there anytime. It's open to the public. Open every day except Monday, which I encourage you to do. Check it out online and then make a trip to go out there. And because they have a museum and they have exhibits there and really cool artifacts there from our people, and but yeah, just another great resource. Then there's also multimedia resources. I like to show a documentary that one of our elders, our late elders, and she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame for her work on the language and
Oh,
revitalizing it. Yeah, her name's Catherine Siva Sabo, and she's from the Los Coyotes Cahuilla Indian Reservation, and around Warner's, right above Warner Springs, and
Mhm.
uh, and so Catherine Sabo, she was granted an honorary doctorate for her work as well, and
Sweet.
yeah, and unfortunately she passed away in 2007. But we had worked with her extensively, myself, my dad, our community, and she left a lot of material for us to continue on, to carry on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we honor her legacy by doing that. And now we're becoming teachers and we're doing all the workshops and programs that she used to do. And we're making our community stronger because of that. So it really, yeah, the language is the legacy, the power, the strength of our ancestors. Because in the language, we have our worldview. It's not just a way to communicate. So I always tell my students, like, how do you see the world? Well, if you grew up speaking English, that's how you see the world, because
Mm-hmm.
you relate to everything in the world through the English language. But if you speak
Right, right.
Korea, yeah, if you speak Korea though, you're relating to the world in a completely different way.
Interesting.
You are because you're acknowledging that the rocks are alive. You're acknowledging the spirit that's in the mountain above me. You're acknowledging the spirit that's in all the trees and the land, and you're acknowledging the spirit of the water as a relative. Fire is a relative too. It's not a destructive force, but it's a relative and a medicine that was put here for us to use to renew the land. So it's a completely different worldview. And then by the time they're done taking my series, so it's 4 classes, right? Four.
Uh-huh.
They're just like, yeah, they get it. They're like, wow, I get it now. I can see what you were saying in the beginning, and it's a
That's
beautiful language. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible, man. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I'm super glad to hear someone is doing that. And I mean, to be actually just talking to the person one on one, I'm very honored to be able to talk to you, like I said. Um, really quick, we're running out of time on this one again. I know you said you wanted to do a song uh before we wrap it up. So one thing we could do is we can run down the time we have, take like another 10-minute break, and we come back and you do your song, and then we wrap up. Or I don't know if you have I don't know if you could do all that in 3 minutes.
yeah. I was just gonna sing one bird song, and then I was gonna talk about what it means. So we could do that actually in the 3 minutes we have.
Okay, yeah. If you
Cool.
want, go ahead.
Okay. Let me grab my rattle real quick.
All right. For anyone who doesn't know, Mr. Madrigal's gonna sing us a beautiful song. And for anyone that can see that pretty mountain back there, I gotta have William describe it to me again. I forget what it is, but it's one of the sacred mountains to the tribe. And yeah, this guy's just a wealth of information, is he not? How about that airline food? Anyways,
Okay, here we go. 2 minutes 30. So I'm gonna sing a bird song, and the bird songs are our way of connecting to our ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, and also to our creators who created the world hundreds of thousands of years. We don't even know how long ago it was, right? And so they created these songs for us, and then every subsequent generation also created songs for us to remember and connect to them for healing and for strengthening our communities and our identities. Matanake na tukmiyanake na paisnake na matanake na tukmiyanake na matanake na tukmiyanake na paisnake na matanake na tukmiyanake na matanake na tukmiyanake na paisnake na matanake na tukmiyanake na matanake na tukmiyanake na paisnake.
beautiful.
So the song was saying, Emata, Emata, it's coming on us. The night, took me the night. Paish, the sunset, it's coming on us. It's starting to get dark. It's starting to get dark, is what it's saying. And so we have a lot of songs like that where we can translate them directly. Some of them are in really, really ancient form of the language. It's hard to translate, but we look at the context of one song, you know, compared to a song cycle of hundreds of songs, right?
Right.
So we're able to understand the journey and the direction that the songs are taking. And we sing these all night, and we dance to them, and we have a good time. And the energy that's generated is what's the community needs, right? And it's what they need to remain resilient communities, strong Indian communities.
I love it, man.